Hello and welcome to the show. This week's okay, my mind has given up and it's only been 15 seconds of the video. This week's Will It Roll, there we go, I can speak properly, honestly, is going to be some more TV and movie cars. Now I'm going to start, I normally do with these at the moment, by saying that there are some cars that get suggested in here that I've previously rolled. For example, this Skyline, I've rolled a Skyline before, so I'm not going to do it again just because this is one of the better known Fast and Furious cars. Also, DeLorean has been rolled a long time ago. The Beetle has been rolled. A lot of the James Bond cars have been rolled. Sort of like the DBS was rolled a fair time ago as well. So there's quite a lot of movie cars that have been rolled, and there's so many movie cars I couldn't possibly go through all of them. So I've tried to kind of get a good selection, get some different cars, and get some interesting cars for this week. Up first, we have the Mitsubishi Eclipse from the first Fast and Furious film. Now, admittedly, this does look a little bit different. It looks a little bit odd because it doesn't have the massive body kit on. I didn't want to kind of go down that route too much with these cars because that's going to change how the car behaves when it goes to rolling. So I put the paint job on. This is the paint job from the storefront. I couldn't paint this myself. I've just put the paint job on and I haven't changed anything else about the car, so keep it as fair as possible for when it comes to rolling. Now, this is the second highest PI car that we have here today, and even this was being a pain when it comes to rolling it. I'm not actually so sure why this. I mean, I guess it is a little bit low. It's a sort of a sports car. Yeah, I'm not sure why this was such a pain. I thought this would be one of the easier ones to roll here, but no, it really wasn't having any of it. And it's not the fastest car in the world. I think it is C-Class, got about 200 odd horsepower, something like that. Yeah, it just wasn't cooperating. It's not going to roll no matter what I did when I attacked the curb. It wouldn't roll over. I think it's a combination of being fairly low and not particularly fast. So it was to the upgrade shop with the Eclipse, and it was the suspension, race suspension, that was put on the car. It had to be raised, had to be stiffened, and it had to have camber on, so it now looks silly and broken. Yeah, I tried it with the raised ride height, the stiffer suspension, and it still wouldn't roll over. I didn't bother saving that replay, so yeah, I had to put the camera on it as well. The camera adds sort of the difficulty of it being fairly hard to aim at the corner. However, it does have a very spectacular roll. I think that's on the second or third attempt, and yeah, there we go. It wasn't very nice to drive with all that suspension setup on it. It was hopelessly tricky. But yeah, I was too surprised when it rolled over fairly straightforwardly with this. I thought this car would be a lot simpler to roll than it was, but there we go, and now it's on its side. Yeah, that was a pretty damn spectacular roll there from the from the Mitsubishi, but there we go. That is the first car rolled today. Up next, we have the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am GTA from Knight Rider. There we go. It is a kit. This is from the old Knight Rider series. I know they did a new one, I think, with a Ford Mustang, which seems a bit odd why they wouldn't use a... I don't know. But yes, this is the old Knight Rider. I believe this is the correct... I don't really know particularly. And the actual Knight Rider car had some sort of body kit on it that I'm not sure if it's in Forza, and I wouldn't have put it on anyway, even if it was. This I was thinking is going to be a nightmare to try and roll, and as you can see, it really is. It's not very fast at all, standard. I think it's around B class. Might even be lower than that, it might even be E-Class. It's incredibly slow, and as you can see, it's very wide, very low to the ground. Yeah, you're never going to roll it. It hasn't got the speed to kind of overcome that very, very low centre of mass. This is much like the problem I had with the DeLorean. When I tried to roll that, however many months ago that was, that also doesn't roll very easily for the same reasons. They are very low, they are very wide, which means a low centre of mass, and you just can't do it. You just haven't got the speed. So, it was to the upgrade shop. Of course, the suspension bits were all put on, raised, stiffened and cambered. That wasn't anywhere near enough either. So I had to get a little bit creative, and I put the engine from a Pontiac G8 in it. So it now has 415 horsepower, which is quite a lot. Admittedly, that's kind of a big upgrade, but since you only have to press one button to swap out the entire engine, I'm going to count it as one upgrade. That might be a little bit cheating. But either way, it still wasn't being very cooperative. Again, when you do this to the suspension on these cars, it makes them rather tricky to drive, and this Pontiac was no exception. It was pretty tough aiming for that sort of point on the corner. As you can see, I was kind of getting a little bit better. It was kind of looking a little more likely to roll, but it was still a real pain. As I said, I'm not really surprised by by this car. We try again. This is getting a bit closer. Even with that's the full ride height, and this thing isn't much higher than a Lamborghini Aventador. That's how that's the difficulty that I'm facing with this car, and it certainly doesn't have the speed of the Aventador. I believe that's probably as close as I got it to rolling with that setup. It just won't go. And even with the wall hadn't been there, it wouldn't have rolled over. It was coming back down anyway before I clattered into the wall. So I had to get creative now. Normally, if the car's sort of struggling, the bodywork's catching on the floor, it would be a case of raising the suspension. But since that had all been raised, I wasn't really sure what I could do. So I guessed at putting on race tyres. That was the first attempt, and it didn't look like things had been particularly promising. However, this is the second attempt, and straight over it went. And then does a little bit of breakdancing on the floor and lands it perfectly. So yeah, the race tyres make it fall over a lot easier, and I'm guessing again this is much like the reason why the camber makes it fall over, is that it just gives it extra grip. The camber, I would say physics technically wise shouldn't, but when it goes on its side, I guess the wheel is more in contact with the floor, and that's why it goes over. And with race tyres, of course, you have even more grip. Now we move on next to, I knew this was going to be a nightmare, the Hudson Hornet. This is from the movie Cars. I had to do this. Every time I do one of these, I'm going to have to choose a different car from Cars to try and roll. Yeah, I knew this was never likely to roll standard. Let's face it, it is very old, very slow, very wide, very long, very heavy, and yeah, it's not particularly good. I don't know, I think it has about sort of 200 odd horsepower. Actually not quite as heavy as I expected. Just look at the stats, 3,700 pounds, but yeah, it's just too slow. It has a 3-speed gearbox. God, it looks so slow as well watching these replays. It's ridiculous. And no, it's not quite as bad as the blooming Camaro we had whenever that was. Was that last week? I forget. The Camaro looked even less likely to roll than this, but still. Yeah, that's never going to roll standard at all. So it was to the upgrade shop again. With this, it was the suspension raised, stiffened, and I believe it had to have camber on it as well. I put a big turbo on it, a race turbo, to get it a bit of speed, and I put a proper gearbox in because that 3-speed was utterly useless. And still, yeah, I missed the curb completely, which was clever, but it's still so slow, even with the humongous turbo. God. Anyway, this I think is on the second or fourth attempt, and it rolled, and I'm not really sure how that worked. I was expecting to be here forever trying to get this car. I thought I was going to have to do massive amounts of upgrades to it. But no, you didn't. And that's possibly the slowest speed roll we've ever had, with the possible exception of the Beetle, that I think might have been slower. That is by far the slowest speed roll we've ever had. I'm amazed that thing ever fell over. I really am. But there we go. Now we move on next to the Aston Martin Vanquish. This is from the James Bond film Die Another Day. This is possibly one of my favourite Bond cars because it had stupendous amounts of gadgets, including cloaking devices, machine guns and rockets, and it was a proper Bond car when they were absolutely mental. I like the James Bond films. I kind of like the modern ones that are a little bit more sensible, but you have to love Die Another Day with just a bazillion gadgets. That's kind of silly, but it's still also incredibly cool. Unfortunately, we don't have any of that in Forza, which is a shame. How good would it be to have like the machine guns popping out of the body, that kind of thing? But yeah, you don't have any on that in this car. This was actually, I would say, the most promising to try a roll standard. You can see it's actually getting on 2 wheels. Not really a surprise when this is an A-class car. It was so nice to drive this car after all those terribly slow things. That was, I think, the closest I ever got to rolling it standard. I mean, this was never likely to be particularly easy to roll anyway. Okay, it's not quite as, I don't know if you'd call this a supercar or not. It's kind of more of a Grand Tourer sort of supercar-y thing. Either way, it's still fairly low. Fairly low to the ground and fairly wide. So yeah, it was always likely to be difficult. In the upgrade shop, it again had to have the race suspension put on, and again it was raised, stiffened, and it had to have camber as well, which made the handling terrible. My mind is not working today very well, although it doesn't normally anyway. Didn't have to have any power in it because it's got plenty of that as it is. As you can see, I may have hit the wall a few times. Is the downside. When you do all of this to the handling, there's no chance you're going to get it stopped before you go into the walls. I tried for a while. You can see it was getting closer, which is always good. It's always good to see when you make a change and it actually looks like it's more likely to roll. But it still wasn't quite going over. And again, I think the bodywork was catching on the floor with this car. It was a bit of a strange one. It was sort of going on 2 wheels and then falling back down again. I think the bodywork could have had something to do with it, because even with raised ride height on these cars, it's not particularly high because it is a sort of sports car. That is as close as it would go to rolling with just the suspension upgraded. Yeah, I couldn't get it to do any more. Every time it did, it would just catch the side skirt, I think, on the floor. So it's back to the upgrade shop, and having seen that it had worked so well with the Firebird, I then stuck racing tyres on the Aston Martin to see what happened and hope that this would this would be successful. And on the first attempt, it was going, and the wall screwed me over again. God damn it, wall. So yeah, racing tyres seem to really be the solution when it comes to rolling these cars. So yeah, I was fairly sure it wasn't going to take much longer to roll this car. If it rolls on the first attempt, it's probably not going to be particularly tricky. And sure enough, on the next attempt, there's a little bit of a slow motion roll, and it's got a bit of breakdancing going on, and lands it perfectly again. The Aston Martin has rolled as well. So there we go. That is 4 more TV and movie cars rolled for you. Now, next week, I'm thinking of doing something sort of like an investigation into seeing what combination of parts or what parts make a car more or less likely to roll. Because yeah, I was surprised at how much difference the race tyres make. I know how much they're going to make if you go for a lap of a track, but when it just comes to rolling. So I'm kind of tempted to look into the other parts and see what other parts might make a car more or less likely to roll. So if you'd like to see me do that, then please do leave a comment in the commenting section, or if you would like to see me do a different sort of theme, you can leave them in the comment sections as well, and they may be in a video at some point. If they're not next week, then they could be in another week. However, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.